But the big news coming late today that has, in a way, soured the build-up to finals footy and perhaps could derail the Bulldogs campaign. It's been a long time between drinks for them when it comes to finals footy. Bulldog Josh AddoCarr allegedly failing a roadside drugs test on Friday night. There's been a lot of conflicting reports surrounding this today. Denny, what do you know from what was a pretty dramatic afternoon?
Well, the way it unfolded today, James, was really interesting. Like, I was at that launch where you were at this morning for the finals, and all the attention was going to be on that. Then Michael Chammas gave me a call saying that he received an anonymous tip-off about Josh AddoCarr failing a drugs test on the roadside. At that point, I hadn't received the same tip-off. Then I checked my phone, and my inbox suddenly had 2 or 3 messages saying the same thing. So all of a sudden, we have to start chasing this. My first call was to Mario Tartak, the manager of Josh AddoCarr, and his explanation was that, yes, Josh had done a roadside drug test. It was inconclusive, and that there was no real drama. So basically a nothing to see here situation. I then sent Gus a text message as the general manager of the Bulldogs and just wanted to check it out. I don't know at that point whether Gus had had similar conversations with Mario or not, but I got the same kind of information that, you know, that there had been an inconclusive test and a second test as well, which is going to be checked as well. From that point, though, that's when it started to get a bit more dramatic because later in the afternoon, the police statement, which we'd asked for at Channel 9, came out and it had said something totally different, that there was a positive return. Now, it's probably stupid for me to sit here talking about a matter when the bloke on my right knows exactly what happened. Gus, I want to ask you, you put out a tweet earlier today with a message that basically put probably journos like me off the scent, not deliberately, but the information that you'd had was that there was an inconclusive test and there was no real concern for Josh AddoCarr. Is that where it was, like mid-morning or late morning today?
Yeah, so this occurred late Friday night. The players were in camp. Josh AddoCarr wasn't playing. He went into camp with the players and he went out for a drive after he couldn't sleep, or he'd been to the game across the road. He wanted to go to the...
He went to the Roosters game, didn't he?
Yeah, he went to the Roosters game across the road. Then he come back, got in his car and went for a drive around Homebush looking for a convenience store or something. I said, what it was. Anyway, he got pulled over by a roadside police and he did a side drugs test. Now, he came in and reported it to us the next morning, but the way it was reported to us Saturday morning felt that he was rather very dismissive of it, that there was no drama, that he hadn't tested positive to anything, that allowed him to drive home and send him on his way. He was free to go.
He drove home?
He drove home from the scene, yeah.
Yep.
So everything sort of led, well, OK, so you got nothing to answer for. You haven't been arrested? No, haven't been this. No. So that was his sort of explanation of events. So
did you speak to him at that point, Gus?
I'd kind of forgotten about it. Until he rang me this morning and said that there was some phone calls he got from players at other clubs, and his wife had got some phone calls that this was bubbling around, and then people in the media started to make some... And I spoke to our chairman. I said, look, I spoke to Josh about this over the weekend twice. I said, and his description of events is that we've got nothing to worry about, and he's got nothing to worry about, that he had a random pull over and roadside test, and one test was inconclusive, the other one was negative, and he drove home. So I can only assume we've got nothing to worry about, you know. But as it turns out this afternoon, there are now conflicting reports from the police, and the way they've described the events of the afternoon, which has led me now to sit down with Josh AddoCarr and his manager face-to-face at 5 o'clock this afternoon to go through exactly how things unfolded and what's happened. And I guess in all of this, what will happen now is that the result of the second drug test will tell the tale. So he did in fact test positive at the scene. He felt it was inconclusive. The policeman did say it was positive. He was put under the arrest for the purposes of a second test. Normally they take that away to a police station somewhere, but they did this in the back of the car. They took that sample and that's gone away to be tested. Now what Josh thought was, because he went and did the second test and they allowed him to go, he thought that was negative. That's where he was getting the thought, well, I've got no case to answer, I can just go. As it turns out, well, the police have got a different opinion on that. So we can only act on what we've been told and the accuracy of what we've been told. I'm not saying that Josh was deliberately misrepresenting. That was his interpretation of the events. The police have a different interpretation. At the end of the day, the second drug test will tell the tale.
Gus, the meeting you had at 5 o'clock today, why did you need to eyeball him? And did you walk out of that meeting thinking that Josh AddoCarr has a future at the Bulldogs?
Well, we've got a long way to go before we get to that point. The reason I wanted the meeting with him this afternoon was because of the conflicting reports. And I spoke to police myself, and I spoke to people that I know within the police force about the procedure on these types of things. And I'm still a little bit confused of some of the events as they've been portrayed, both from the police and from Josh AddoCarr. Even the fact that he was allowed to drive away from the scene, which I didn't think you could do if you'd had a positive test.
And he definitely did drive away from the scene.
He definitely did drive away from the scene. And I understand under the
new laws, apparently.
Apparently new laws. Anyway, that's for the police to determine whatever to do. Mm-hmm. But we could only act then. And what we did this afternoon, the chairman asked me to put out just a message on social media because it was bubbling around and it sounded like everyone had the wrong story or they were looking for a story that probably wasn't there. We could only act on what we'd been told. I'm not saying that Josh has deliberately misled anyone. His interpretation of how this has unfolded is probably different to what the police now say. But at the end of the day, he has tested positive. The real question is as to why. And with that, he vehemently defends himself that he shouldn't be testing positive to anything, that he hasn't taken anything that would test positive to. So I guess the test will be in the second sample.
Gus, they often say, I'm not saying Josh covered anything up, but they often say if you don't come clean and try to not tell the full truth in the first time around, it's worse than what you did. Yeah. I know you're pretty old school, and you did go into bat for him. Do you in any way feel misled or let down?
It's hard in talking to Josh, and I know Josh well. I don't think Josh deliberately misled us. I think his interpretation of the events was obviously his own interpretation and inaccurate, but it's probably led to now where it's hard to trust anything about that. And it looks like there's been some sort of cover-up from us and him, which is not the case. Anyway, it'll all come out with the police. We haven't spoken to the police or the arresting officer, but we now know that they've been in touch with NRL Integrity, and we'll just have to see how it plays out. But Josh vehemently defends himself that there shouldn't be drugs in his system.
Just for clarity, on the conversations, the first one it was, no, I didn't test positive, and the second one,
he said the result was inconclusive, and then they took a second one and they let him go, which he assumed he was negative. That's how his interpretation was.
Okay.
It's probably not how it worked. The first one was positive. They took the second one to send away. They let him go anyway, which I didn't know was now law, that the police are at their discretion to let them drive or not drive after the test.
Gus, do you let him play? I mean, at the moment, where he's obviously innocent till proven guilty, all that sort of stuff. Do you let him play because of maybe his state of mind and also the impact it could have on the rest of your football team? You're playing your biggest game of not just the year, but probably for the last 6-8 years. It's a massive game for your club.
Yeah, Josh has had a lot going on in his life in recent times: injury, family, people close to him with their families. And now this, I mean, it's been a tough time for him off the field, and we've got to be mindful of the fact that we've got a big game and we can't be distracted. Josh has indicated that he wants to play. I've spoken to the NRL Integrity Unit tonight, and as of this point, they would have no reason to stop him from playing. But that's really now a discussion for the coach and the chairman when I sit down with them tomorrow and Josh again, and once we get a little bit more information. But it was obvious that this afternoon there were conflicting descriptions of what had happened here, and that and he was quite honest with us in his words on Saturday morning. He came straight and told us what had happened, but at the time there was no sense of a positive test or any further tests that needed to be done. So.
Gus, do you know how long until the second test comes back? Because I mean that ends it. We've seen this happen before in situations where someone has tested positive and the test has come back, it's a false positive. So hopefully that's what it is. If he vehemently denies that he's having any system.
Josh contacted our club doctor today and went and offered himself for his own blood and urine tests today to have his own record of what the test might look like. Yep. How much weight that will carry, regardless of what they show in those tests, I don't know. But I guess the most important one is the tests that were taken at the scene by the police on the night.
And is there a time on it when he comes back? Do you know how long?
I think it's 2 to 3 days.
Club presentation night tonight, he's not there?
No, I've just asked him to have a rest tonight.
Okay.
Gus, what are you feeling right now? I mean, he's one of your superstar players, and it doesn't seem like the act of someone you want at that club to be doing that sort of thing. I mean, it seems like it makes it a really difficult week for your club.
Yeah, well, I don't want to really express how I feel at the moment, but we'll get through it. Thunderbolts come every now and then, and it's a big week for the club, big week for the fans, and this is not going to stop us from putting in a good performance on the weekend, whether he plays or not.